Hey football fans, on this episode of Tailgate Talk, we will predict who will be the Super Bowl champion and MVP in this Sunday's matchup between the Chiefs and the Eagles, and speak on the best coaching hires since the end of the regular season. Let's discuss it all on Tailgate Talk. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of Tailgate Talk. Today we are going to be talking about Super Bowl predictions as well as Super Bowl MVP predictions and who we think is the best and worst hires for head coach as the season has come to a close. We have our guest here today, Evan, back again for episode 2. We're just going to kick it right off talking about the Super Bowl. Who do you have and why?
Very simple. If I like money, I'm taking the Chiefs. If I like the game of football, I'm taking the Eagles. I don't really think there's much else to be said about that. These two teams have faced each other. Granted, they were very different when they did, but I just think that they faced each other in the regular season as well. I just think stylistically these teams were destined to play each other again at this stage. And there's really no, I hate to say there's really no wrong pick because there really isn't. I just think these teams are so even, but when two teams are even and one of them has Pat Mahomes and the other doesn't, I'm taking the team with Pat Mahomes. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's a very square take on the game, but sometimes it's better to just reduce everything down to its most simple elements, which is who has the better QB. It's very simple.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I think I have to go with Mahomes just based on his track record, the fact that he wins these types of games almost every time, 9 times out of 10. I think if the Eagles really want to try to have a chance here, they really need to establish the run game early. They need to get on the ground early, and Saquon needs to have a great day. If he doesn't, they're going to be forced to abandon their game plan, which has been working for them throughout the entire season. And I think, there's a chance that they could throw the ball down the field and have a good impact, but I just don't see it. I think it's really dependent on how they run the ball with Jalen Hurts and Saquon and how their offensive line responds to a very good pass rush in the Chiefs. And like I said, I just lean towards the Chiefs more because they have the defense to make Jalen Hurts uncomfortable, to make Saquon uncomfortable, and they have Mahomes. They have the Golden Boy. He's the best quarterback in the league in terms of not stats, but the more important column, in my opinion, wins. He's a true game manager. He knows how to win these types of games, and he's done it a bunch. So I just think that, with all of that in mind, I think it's definitely going to be a game one in the trenches, just based on if the Eagles can establish their run game and if the Chiefs can do the same. But I just know that they're also, going to be passing a little bit more. So I definitely like them. If I was going to take a bet, I do like a Mahomes passing yard total, maybe 225, 250, and a Chiefs win. That's what I would go for, and feel confident in that. Is there any bets that you have that you might feel would be good to take?
Yeah, I've got one for you. If you're not really too keen on taking some of the more popular picks, maybe like a Saquon anytime or some of these other prop bets, I've got one for you. First half under. First half under, let me tell you why. First half under, I just think that these teams are cold start teams. They have been all season. It doesn't matter what type of situation you put them in. They're very slow to warm up and get into the game. Granted, they have exceptions to the rule. They'll play certain teams where stylistically they're able to get into what they like to do faster, and obviously they're going to score points, at a higher clip. But I just think that these two teams are so alike and play into each other's strengths and weaknesses so well that I just don't think they're going to figure each other out in the way that they will in the second half. In the second half, I think all bets are going to be off, and they're going to be firing on all cylinders, both on offense and defense. And with that comes a higher scoring type of game. I just feel like that's more for the second half after these teams have had a full half of football under them. They're a little bit more tired, a little bit more beat up. They're going to be more susceptible to some of the plays that weren't working in the first half. So if you're not really too high on particular teams or particular players in this Super Bowl, I'd have to say first half under is your friend. if not that, first quarter under is even more of a daring pick. But I would probably lean more towards first half, but I'd say either one of those, and you're going to be in the money. I just think these teams are going to take a while to warm up, but by the
Yeah.
time that third quarter starts and the whistle is sounded, these two teams are going to go at each other. It's going to be a dogfight.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first half will definitely be a feeling out process for both teams too, just kind of figuring out each other's offenses, especially with Saquon and the run game that the Eagles present. I think that you know it's gonna be tough early for the Chiefs defense to not get punched in the mouth. So just keeping an eye out on that to see how they respond. Because Saquon is known to set the tone early. So if they can kind of keep it even in the first half, I think, like you said, you'll kind of be doing the second half for an explosion of offense on both sides of the ball. And I think both teams will really turn it on. Kind of segueing into our next question, who is your pick for MVP and why in this year's Super Bowl?
So if I had to go with the popular pick for both teams, which is just, say it. It's just one of those things that it pains me to say. But if we're looking at the Eagles, it's Saquon. If we're looking at the Chiefs, it's Pat Mahomes. It's very simple. Once again, kind of the way that I'm looking at this game is don't overthink it. The best are going to show up. It's the Super Bowl. It's the way it goes. Now, if I want to get spicy, maybe take some dark horse picks for either team, I'm going to say for the Chiefs, Chris Jones. I think Chris Jones has been playing the best football of his career the last 5 years, and if it weren't for Aaron Donald, he would get much more coverage and much more love from fans universally. But we're talking about a guy that I don't think the Chiefs do what they do over the course of the last 5-ish years without him being there. He is as invaluable to that team as Mahomes is. If you wanted an MVP on that defense, that's your guy. For the Eagles, I don't. I'd like to say Jalen Carter and kind of mirror a little bit, but I just don't feel as strongly about it. I just think he has more time to kind of find his footing and become, as good of a player as he's going to become. I just don't think his time is now for an award as, large as a Super Bowl MVP. But someone who is A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown has tempered a lot of his personality, his game. And I think all of it has come out this season. You've seen him as kind of a new player. He could have just as easily went the DK Metcalf route and become a little bit too wild, a little bit too much for public consumption. But he's somebody who really took a look in the mirror, dialed it back, and said, all right, let me just focus on being the best player I can be, and not being a personality or being something larger than life. He's just out there to play football. He's out there to go and win games. And, that's the thing about the Eagles, too, is that's that mindset that they have this year that I think makes this game a little bit more competitive than it was the last time they played. But if I had to say any particular player that isn't, Saquon Barkley, I'm going to have to say A.J. Brown. I just think that's a guy who could catch fire and just as easily go for 125 yards, 2 TDs. He could go off. I really do think it.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick, and one that people aren't leaning towards. I think if the Eagles kind of have to add a little bit more wrinkles to their offense, if Saquon's a little bit uncomfortable early on, I could definitely see that because they're going to be forced to pass the ball a little bit more than normal. And who are they going to pass to? They're going to pass to A.J. Brown. He's their most reliable target. He's proven all year that, he is that guy. He is that superstar wide receiver that you can lean on. And especially with the offense that they have, I think that it makes it even easier to lean on him because you're not putting the whole weight of the game on him. They have talent evenly dispersed throughout the entire offense, whether it's the offensive line or their skill players. I definitely like that. I'm honestly just gonna be a square and just go with the square picks. I think if the Chiefs win, it's gonna be Mahomes because he's just gonna have to have the biggest impact on the game. And just going along with the same sort of mindset, I have to go with Saquon on the Eagles side because those are really the two players that stick out to me. If either team is going to win respectively, those guys are going to have a big day because they have to. They're the teams, I don't want to say built around them, but they are a huge piece of each team. And without them, without a solid performance from either of them, it's going to be very, very tough to win because those are two guys who have really had the biggest impact on their regular season and playoff journeys this year. Um, and Saquon, more stat wise, Mahomes not as stat wise, but still the sentiment remains the same. These guys both control the narrative for their respective teams, and you really have to keep an eye on them. And if you don't, they're probably going to pop off. So I'm going with the two square picks here. Is there anything else you want to add there?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, I think that you've got your dark horse picks there, and I think like I kind of lean towards the favorites, so you kind of get a little bit of a sense of where you might want to put your money if you're looking for value, or if you're just looking for the safe bet. Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. I feel good about my picks. Moving forward here, there's been a lot of head coaching hires since the season has come to a close, since we've entered the postseason. Is there any hires that have stuck out to you as either super positive or negative?
You know, I like to come on here. I like to be upbeat. I like to be positive. I really do. Um, if you're a Jets fan, stock up on Kleenex. Stock up on things to watch other than Jets football. Because as much as I like Aaron Glenn, as much as I like the type of guy he is, we know him very well as Saints fans. You probably know him very well as part of the Lions and what they've done there and turning it around there. But this has shades of Robert Saleh written all over it, and it doesn't. To me, I know people are going to look at it and they're going to say it's very contingent on what he does with Aaron Rodgers, because he's being put in that position to say, hey, you're either going to stick around and we're going to try to work with what you got, or we're going to completely wipe the slate clean and we're going to do something else. And that's a big decision for a brand new hire to have to make. But at the same time, I just don't think that that's a decision that's really going to factor into how he gels with what's going on there. They just don't have the pieces for me to believe that they're a team that's going to go 500 next year. They're a team that's going to compete next year. I just don't. I just there's not a world that I can imagine where that's the case. And I want so desperately the Jets to be competitive again. Because I just know in my heart that when New York sports are, they have teams that are great. Like, look at the Knicks in the NBA, what they've been able to do for NBA viewership and getting people back into the sport. It's one of those things where, and I know it's all relative, we live on the East Coast, but it really is such a huge market that when those teams play well, that, it just rises the attendance, people are more involved, but it's just one of those things where I look at this hire and I'm like, is that the guy that I think is going to be at the helm of this new movement? No, that's a guy that I probably get as a defensive coordinator, and then I go and find an actual head coach, because it's an offensive league. Look at what Andy Reid has done with the Chiefs in the last 5 years. That's a guy who is offensively minded, has arguably the best defensive coordinator that we've seen in the last, I can't. I think Spagnuolo is he's one of the Mount Rushmore DCs of the last 25 years. I mean, that guy's just one of the best to ever do it. But my point being is that the way that they distribute power in that situation is the way it should be. You need to have a head coach who's more prone to offense than defense. It's just, if we look at situations where coaches who are more prone to defensive-minded strategy have won Super Bowls, it's because they have amazing defenses. It's just the truth.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you look at the way that the Chiefs are run, they are the prime example of how to structure your franchise in terms of leadership and coaching. The Jets are taking a real risk here by doing this again, because it has proven not really positive for them, especially with Saleh, who is very similar in terms of a culture guy and energy guy. And that works for some, but I just don't think it works for the Jets, especially in the situation that they're in. I think it probably would have benefited them more to go out and get somebody who's offensively minded, especially if they're going to be changing quarterbacks. But I think Aaron Glenn is a great coaching hire in certain situations, but this is not one of them. And I think also, if you, like you said, look at the standard of how things are run at the top of the league, the most preferable structure, if you really want to take a team with a solid roster and win now, is to get yourself an offensive minded coach and then let the rest fall into place. Go out and find a defensive coordinator. Once again, the Chiefs are very fortunate. They have two of the very best, arguably the best at each coordinator and head coaching position. So it's very difficult to strike gold there. But I think Aaron Glenn is a great leader. I think he's going to turn the culture around in the locker room. But at the same time, the Jets, and we've seen it. They've had a lot of talking heads, a lot of coaches that you think are going to change things, but you can't really believe it until you see it. And I really think Aaron Glenn is their best possible option if they were going to go get a defensive-minded guy. So that's the route that they chose to take. I don't really prefer it. I think that, like you said, it's an offensive league. So yeah, I just I don't know if I like that very much. What I do like though, I do like the Raiders hire of Pete Carroll. Um, I think it's the same kind of thing, turning the culture around, but in a different way, in a more beneficial way where we've seen Pete Carroll in the past, his experience at the college and professional level. He's been a part of some legendary offensive and defensive units. And more so than that, I just think that he's a very relaxed coach. He's going to let them go out and play football. It's a young unit who just wants to go out there and win games. And they're in a rebuilding process right now. So I just think that it's very low stakes for them. They're not going to be as worried about winning now and more just about somebody who's providing stability through this time, through this rebuild. And, hopefully for them, they can go out and get a good quarterback because that could really change things. And I know they've been dying for, a future piece of an offense that they can, get behind for, the next 5 to 10 years. So I really, really love that hire. I do like Ben Johnson as well. I think that's, kind of alluding to what we said about the structure of things. That's the route you want to go. Get yourself a guy who's a great leader, who's going to change the culture, but also has that offensive-minded presence, especially with a quarterback like Caleb Williams. That's what you need right now. So I think that he benefits them the most. And then if you want to go out, you want to change your DC, find someone new, go ahead and do that. But I just think the current structure of things right now in the NFL is offense first. So I'd have to agree with you there. But those are really the head coaching hires that have stuck out to me personally. I don't know if there's anything you would like to add there.
No, I'd have to agree with you. I mean, I think Ben Johnson on paper is probably the best hire of all of them. I mean, if you look at what he was able to do with the Lions offense, they were the most efficient offense in football probably the last 2 years. I mean, the way that they scored points at a high clip, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they had talent galore on that team. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very easy to just program that offense to be amazing because they have so much talent at a base level. But I do think he's a good hire. I think that's a very much a peanut butter and jelly situation where it's like the Bears aren't expected to do amazing things, but they have time to build. They have a couple years before, all right, well, they need to start winning games for people to be convinced. But to me, I think Pete Carroll personally is the best hire of any of these hires so far. I just think that he's a guy who has won and lost at the highest level of the game and has been, like you said, a part of so many historical offensive units, defensive units. And that's a guy who, when I talk about the dispersion of power in creating coaching, like having a DC, having an OC, and how you delegate what they're able to do in a given situation, that's a guy who understands who needs to have the power at certain times.
Yep.
He really just has a knack and a feel for building those types of rosters. And another thing is that he gets the best out of his players. I know that a lot could be said about Russell Wilson's success in Seattle and him being a young player, but he got the best out of Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Another guy, Geno Smith, a guy who floundered around the league for the first couple years of his career, goes to the Seahawks and arguably has his best seasons of his career with under Pete Carroll.
Yep.
Getting the most out of his guys. I just think that he's an energizer. He's a guy that really understands player perspective more than most coaches. And I said it before, we had been having another conversation, but I really do think that Pete Carroll will end up being a better hire than Jim Harbaugh, considering that they are in that same division. They will be going head-to-head twice a season. I just think that he brings so much more to the table than a guy like Harbaugh, who, yes, has that experience, yes, has won at high levels in the game, but I just don't think that he has that insight that Pete Carroll has to understand what makes or breaks a winning culture. And I think that the Raiders are also at the benefit of having nothing to prove.
Yeah.
Not nothing to prove. I just don't think that how do I put it? They don't have a lot to, they're not expected to go out there and go 500. Even with Pete Carroll as head coach, even with additions or subtractions, even with, I don't really know what their QP situation is going to be, because that's a whole other conversation, a whole other bag of chips. But I just think that if you're starting the rebuild and you're starting to look at new horizons, this is the decision you needed to make. It really is. This is a guy who is completely and totally invaluable in the league, and is somebody that is going to be sorely missed for the Seahawks, because he brought such an energy and a feel to that team that made them what they were. And I'm gonna be watching closely to see what the Seahawks are able to do without him, and what the Raiders are going to be able to do with him, because I think that will be more telling of how great he is as a coach and how great he is as a personality to have. It's just one of those situations we're going to have to see how it plays out. But I really do think that he is the perfect hire for that situation.
Yep. I think, just to sum up what you said there, low stakes, low expectations, and a great leader and a great football mind. I mean, I just think that's a great recipe for success. And I think they'll exceed expectations this year. I think the change that he brings, combined with, the fact that they aren't expected to do much, it's really the best situation that you can have, to be honest, because he's honestly just going to go in there and have fun with it, let his players have fun. And like you said, he brings the best out of his players from a performance and a culture aspect. I think he lets his players be themselves. He doesn't confine them to his system. He's very free-spirited in that way, and I just think it translates on the field. And you saw that with the best Seahawks teams that he coached. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of just how I feel about it. I feel very strongly about that hire. And, yeah, I think that it's a great hire. And Evan does as well. So we're on the same page there. Hopefully we're on the same page next week when we talk about the fallout of the Super Bowl. Episode 3 will be coming your way after the big game. We'll be talking about the fallout of it all, as well as projected drafts going into the month of March. So that will be very interesting to see where everyone falls. If anyone else announces that they are going to be headed to the draft, taking their talents to the NFL, we'll have all that for you on the next episode of Tailgate Talk. We thank you guys for watching. If you want to like, comment, subscribe, we would really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching.